Hello, this is Chuck Ridgway, Automation Technology Manager at Horner. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday live stream. Well, we're about to wrap up August, which means we're about ready to wrap up IEC month here at Horner. So today is our fifth and final topic of the month that's related to IEC. And specifically today, we're going to demystify Cscape's Enhanced IEC editor. So what in the heck do we mean by demystifying Enhanced IEC? Well, at Horner, we like to give our customers choices, and one of the ways we give them choices is through their choice of logic programming languages. So we have a couple of different variations or styles with Advanced Ladder, and we have a couple different variations on IEC as well. Now, of course, regardless of which logic language you choose, you're still using the same software, the same controllers, and you've got the ability to, make your choice. And for everything else you configure, the screens, the networking, and that sort of thing, for the most part, that's all pretty uniform. But because we have a couple of different options for IEC, we call them Standard IEC and Enhanced IEC. Just because it's clear to us doesn't mean it's always clear to our customers. So we're going to identify specifically what we mean when we say Enhanced IEC, so you can decide whether that variation of the IEC programming languages is the right logic language for you. All right. And today I am flying solo, although Casey is standing by to answer any questions you might have. Let's take a look at how we break down today's topic. Okay, of course, we're going to answer the question, what is Enhanced IEC? That's really the reason we're here today. We're going to talk about why Enhanced IEC exists in the first place and how it works. We're going to talk about the top 5 benefits for Enhanced IEC, how you enable Enhanced IEC, and then how you can try it. Okay, so as I mentioned in the opening, there are multiple programming options when it comes to logic in Cscape. You have your traditional advanced ladder, both with the register-based advanced ladder, which is the way ladder used to be 20 years ago from every manufacturer. And then you have variable-based advanced ladder, which is a few years old now, where all your variables are just that. They're variables, and they don't necessarily all have to be mapped to memory locations. And then we have our standard IEC programming languages, which are based upon the IEC standard with 4 primary languages and a total of 5 for a more standardized approach. And we give customers, as I mentioned, the ability to choose the one that works best for them. Now, let's talk about how this all works at runtime. Okay, so on the left, we've got the application development software, which is Cscape. Every option is free. Cscape is free. And what we have there is we've got register-based advanced ladder, variable-based advanced ladder, and standard IEC. And for the first 2 options, the ladder options, you can see that after you develop your program and do your download, the code is directly downloaded into your OCS and executed by the Horner Runtime Logic Engine. But you'll also notice that with standard IEC, before the code can be downloaded, it needs to be converted. And that conversion process, while it does take a little bit of extra time, also can impact the amount of variables that can be used in a project. And also it does add a little bit of a delay in terms of execution time. So it's not a huge amount, maybe 10% penalty for the code conversion, but it is there. So there is a little bit of a penalty in terms of not only the number of variables you can use in your project, but also in terms of the execution speed with standard IEC. What is Enhanced IEC? Well, for years, and we've supported IEC programming for years at Horner and have a lot of customers using this style of programming, and they really like it. But those customers have said, hey, we'd really like to see additional program variable capacity, and we would like to see that penalty that we're paying in execution speed at runtime, that 10% or approximate amount. We'd like to get rid of that so that we can enjoy the same benefits of speed and capacity that the advanced ladder users have. And so that we thought that was very important that we deliver that, and we determined the best way to make that happen was to change the fundamental way that IEC is executed in the OCS. So if you take a look at an updated diagram that now includes Enhanced IEC, you can see we didn't really change anything on the first 3 languages, but we've added Enhanced IEC And again, as you develop your program with Enhanced IEC and Cscape, you'll notice now it will directly run on the Horner OCS, but in a separate runtime logic engine that's dedicated for Enhanced IEC. So that was really the best way to implement the enhancements to IEC, was to have a separate runtime logic engine present on the OCS controller. Now, because of that fundamental execution change, all right, there are some things to be aware of. First of all, we did have to use some licensed code for inclusion in the firmware that's running, that second firmware package that's running on the Horner OCS. No manufacturer develops all their code from scratch. A lot of Cscape is developed from scratch by our engineers, but not every piece. And some of the code that's included for Enhanced IEC at runtime is licensed code. Also, because now there needs to be room for 2 runtime engines, depending on which language is chosen, we needed larger OCS memory locations, flash and RAM, to execute both of those, which meant that because of this larger memory requirement, not all OCS models could support these enhancements. So because of that, instead of replacing standard IEC with Enhanced IEC, we added Enhanced IEC as an option. That way, all of our platforms from the lowest end all the way to the top end could be programmed in IEC. The lower end products only standard IEC, and then the rest of the product line could support either. Okay, so if we take a look at those product lines and where they fit, if you're using XL series or XL Prime series, for all intents and purposes, you can use either standard IEC or Enhanced IEC. If you're using the XLE, XLT, or the Micro OCS series, you're pretty much limited to standard IEC or, of course, the advanced ladder languages. So be aware that for those lower end platforms, if you want to use IEC, you're going to be using standard IEC. Does that mean that when we say Enhanced IEC, really all we're talking about is just, larger variable support and faster execution? No, there's more to Enhanced IEC than just that. So what are the 5 biggest areas that Enhanced IEC provides? Well, starting at the top, of course, what we've already talked about, the larger variable capacity and faster runtime. We also add logic simulation and advanced troubleshooting. That can be a big deal. We'll definitely cover that in some detail. Comprehensive system event handling. What do we mean by that? Well, we'll cover that as well. Better ASCII and string handling instructions. For some applications, string handling is really important, and Enhanced IEC offers some real advantages there. We'll review those. And then another thing that some people don't think about, and that is this. With Enhanced IEC, there's a flexible Modbus map. So the way we do Modbus is a little bit different. Now keep in mind, for those of you who are doing Modbus with IEC, we have a couple of other videos we've done in the past that are there on our YouTube library or on our website that you can search for, and I would highly encourage you to check those out. All right, let's start looking at these 5 areas of enhancements, starting from the bottom at number 5. Let's start by talking about Modbus. So one of the side effects of adding this second runtime engine to the OCS firmware for the XL series and XL Prime series is that with Enhanced IEC, there is no such thing as internal memory. So no %R, %M, %T. Those just don't exist with Enhanced IEC. Now you still have real world I's, Q's, AI's, and AQ's, and system bits and registers. Those are still there and they're usable, but R's, M's, and T's just don't exist. And for those of you who've used Horner and Modbus before, you know that there is a standard Modbus map that we typically use that maps Horner registers over to Modbus registers. So if the R's, M's, and T's don't exist, then really we can't use that Modbus map. So instead, what we've done is we really allow the customer, the Enhanced IEC user, to kind of make their own Modbus map, if you will. So when you go into the network configuration under either Modbus, basically, let's say under Modbus server or Modbus slave for Modbus TCP, then in addition to, of course, selecting whether you're using Modbus TCP or Modbus UDP, you now have the ability to allocate individual arrays for Modbus holding registers, Modbus input registers, for Modbus input bits, and for Modbus output coils. So the 4 primary types of Modbus data. Now you can create an array for each of those and size that array so that only the data you want to share with your application actually gets shared through those 4 different register types. So effectively, you're creating your own custom Modbus map. So for some customers, that's a real advantage because they don't necessarily want, the whole Horner memory table to be potentially accessible. They'd like to, limit that down to just maybe, a few holding registers or a few input registers that they want to share with their customers for their machine. So this can be a real advantage for some. The other area, we're counting from number 5 to number 1, going to number 4, better string handling. What do we mean by that? Well, first of all, before we start talking about string handling in Enhanced IEC, let's talk about how it's handled in the other 3 languages, Advanced Ladder, Register and Variable Based, as well as Standard IEC. With those languages, we handle strings effectively as byte type data, where we're looking at characters, where you've got effectively, especially with register-based logic, where you've got 2 bytes per word or 2 characters per word, okay? So that's how it's typically handled in register-based advanced ladder. When you get into the variable-based languages, then you've got byte arrays where each byte represents a character. However, you don't necessarily have a whole lot of instructions available for string handling. There's a few built into the standard Cscape languages, and we've added some user-defined function blocks that you can learn about in some of our live stream videos. But in general, we don't have nearly the amount of string instructions that are available with Enhanced IEC. With Enhanced IEC, we've added something like 20 additional instructions that are available, all dedicated for strings. And you actually have a string data type available in Enhanced IEC as well for a whole variety of different string functions. So much more sophisticated and better string handling available with Enhanced IEC. And in some applications, barcode applications, or maybe applications where you're going to be dealing with a lot of either barcode data or print data or something of that nature, maybe even some database data to a certain extent, that could offer a real advantage. Let's look at enhancement number 3, and that is comprehensive system event handling. So if you look at the project navigator in an Enhanced IEC project, you'll notice, of course, the normal logic modules for your main loop and your subroutines. But at the bottom, you'll see there are 4 added modules for exceptions. And these are all structured text-based modules that you can use in special situations. So for instance, there's one dedicated for on startup. So some code that will be executed every time the controller starts up. There's another dedicated for shutdown. Again, some code that you can add that will be executed every time the controller shuts down. So that could be something to take advantage of. Also, you can react more elegantly if an unexpected error were to occur. For instance, one thing that we use a lot in variable-based languages, of course, are arrays, and arrays have indexes. And if you have code that you've written and you accidentally assign a negative value to an index, that's going to cause a problem. If you assign an index that's larger than the total size of the array, that's a problem. Well, with Enhanced IEC, you can program some structured text that will execute whenever that situation may occur. Now, hopefully that situation never occurs, but if it does, you've got some code that you can execute to react the way you want the equipment to react. And similarly, if you have a divide by 0 math error, you've got another routine that you can configure that will cause the machine to react the way you want in that scenario as well. So these are comprehensive system event handling that is better than the other options. Okay, reason number 2, maybe to go with Enhanced IEC. Now you get into the logic simulation and the advanced troubleshooting tools. And for some folks, this is a big deal. Let's face it, with IEC languages especially, we do a lot of loops, right? For next loops, do while loops, and there's a lot of things that can happen in loops. We can get our indexes mixed up. We can create an infinite loop by mistake. And with Enhanced IEC, you can test your program logic without an OCS controller connected, or even if it is connected, you can test out your logic before you download it. So that can be a real benefit, especially if your code is a little bit complex and you have something that you're struggling getting just right. There are some tools that are available that can be really nifty. For instance, you can execute instruction by instruction if that's going to help you troubleshoot. You can execute one scan at a time and see what's going on at the end of each scan. You can set breakpoints in your logic, okay, and say, what happens up through this point in the logic when I stop here. And then another one that's really good is you can set trace points. So a trace point will basically be, you'll add a variable to a trace point, for instance, and you can trace that variable's value all throughout the scan. So that variable might change value several times during the scan. If you're just doing regular troubleshooting, you'll only be able to see the value at the end of the scan. You won't be able to see any of the intermediate values. Whereas with trace points, you can see every single value and when they occur. So that can be really valuable as well. So really one of the biggest advantages to Enhanced IEC is definitely the logic simulation and the advanced troubleshooting tools. Okay, and then our number one reason that we've really already covered, and that is larger variable capacity with Enhanced IEC and faster runtime execution. So again, support from instead of 10,000 variables, greater than 64,000 variables, and you won't pay any execution penalty for executing IEC or Enhanced IEC versus the same code if it was programmed with Horner Advanced Ladder. Okay, so that's your number one reason there. Okay, now let's talk about how we can enable Enhanced IEC in Cscape. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is make sure that just standard IEC is enabled before we can choose the enhanced version. Okay, so to enable that, we go to the Tools, Application Settings area. Okay, and then under Application, the very bottom, which I've highlighted, you can see all the different types of programs you want to be available every time you create a new file. Okay, and by default, supporting IEC isn't always checked. There's another checkbox beneath IEC, and that is support Enhanced IEC by default. So if you're in the scenario where every time you do an IEC program, you want to do an Enhanced IEC program, then you would go ahead and check that checkbox. Otherwise, if you're going to mix and match, sometimes enhanced, sometimes not, then you would leave that unchecked, and then in a second step, you would go for a particular project and turn on Enhanced IEC. And that second step is shown here. So for that second step, you go to the Tools, Editor Options, and the Compiler Options area, and then you check that checkbox for Enhanced IEC mode. Now, you're just noticing now maybe the display/validate license button that's up there on the screen, okay? So that indicates that Enhanced IEC is a licensed feature, and it does require a voucher code, which today costs $50 US, to license a particular OCS for Enhanced IEC. So if you remember back at the beginning, let's now talk about why Enhanced IEC is not free. I mean, if you remember back at the beginning when we talked about the fact we added a unique runtime engine for Enhanced IEC that had some licensed code in it, well, we've got to pay for that license somehow. So we had two options at Horner. We could either raise the price of every OCS, okay, because we were including that capability with every OCS, or we could allow customers who were utilizing that feature to pay for it through a modest licensing fee. And that's the route we chose to take. So today, still, IEC, even though it's worldwide very popular, in the US, it's still just a percentage of the applications, maybe 25% or so. So we didn't want to raise the price of every single controller for what is a feature that would only be used by a relatively small percentage of our customers. Small percentage, but important. There is some good news, though, and that is, for instance, that if you're looking forward to the new Canvas series that we've talked about on this channel that is going to be released concurrently with Cscape 10, all the Canvas units will support included Enhanced IEC available to use. So no extra licensing required. It'll be pre-licensed at the factory. And by the way, it'll also be pre-licensed for MQTT Sparkplug and for WebMI, which are also features today that are licensed in the XL series and in the XL Prime series. Now I have some more good news for you. If you comment on this video that you would like to try Enhanced IEC, we will send you a free voucher code so you can try that. So we'll meet you halfway. If there's something you want to check out, again, just comment on the video that you would like to try it, and we'll see that you get a voucher code at no cost so you can try that out. Now, next, what I want to do is I want to show you the licensing procedure. Now, the licensing procedure is very simple, and as always, not as always, I don't always pre-record my demos, but this one I did. I recorded just a couple hours ago. And the video I recorded is about 5 minutes long. It doesn't take 5 minutes to license a product. It just takes 5 minutes to hear me slowly explain every step, When you actually execute it, you can probably do it in 30 seconds. But here we go. Let's take a look at all the different steps and the things that you need to follow when you are licensing a unit for Enhanced IEC. Here's the unit that I'm going to license for Enhanced IEC. Now it happens to be an EXLW. Okay, remember, only the XL series from the XL4 on up, the XL Prime series, as well as a majority of the RCCs can be used with Enhanced IEC. So you've got to have a unit that is compatible. A couple of the things you want to make sure that you've got ready to go before licensing. First of all, whenever I'm licensing anything, I always want to make sure my time and date are relatively accurate. So I recorded this a few hours ago, a few hours before the live stream. That's why you see the time and date there, but it is accurate. The other thing that you will need when you're licensing Horner products is you will need a micro SD memory card. So if I go to the system menu here, you'll see if I look under removable media that even though there aren't any files on there, I do have a removable media card ready to go. Now, with Enhanced IEC, you only need the removable media card for the licensing process. After the license has been administered, you can remove the card and you're good to go. So just something to keep in mind. You need an eligible unit, you need time and date to be set basically accurately, and you need a memory card. And the other thing is you need your controller, one way or another, to be communicating with Cscape, whether that's over Ethernet, whether that's over USB, whatever your normal connection would be, it needs to be communicating. Your unit needs to be communicating to Cscape. All right, now let's fire up Cscape and take a look at that. Okay, so I have my program open here, and it is an IEC program. It would need to be an IEC program. Remember, if you haven't enabled IEC, you do that through the Tools, Application Settings options down here. So you need to make sure IEC is set. If you're always going to be doing Enhanced IEC, you can check that check mark, and then every time you open a new IEC program, it's automatically going to be enhanced. Otherwise, if you only sometimes use Enhanced IEC, then the way you switch from Standard IEC to Enhanced IEC is also in the Tools menu, but this time in the Editor Options, under Compiler Options, and you make sure that checkbox is checked. Okay, this also happens to be the area in which we can license our controller for Enhanced IEC. So again, we want to make sure that we're connected, and I am connected over Ethernet with my controller. So the other thing I have to make sure of before I actually go to display and validate the license is that my computer is connected to the internet, because what will happen is all the licensing information is going to require the internet to be deployed, at least from the standpoint of either registering a new voucher as a new license or in looking up a license that may already exist for this controller. So when I hit display validate license, it tells me two things. First of all, it tells me that it's not licensed for Enhanced IEC. It also tells me the MAC address of the OCS I'm connected to. And that's important. You know you're good if you see that it was able to read the MAC address, means we're connected to the unit. And if it can verify there's no license, then we were able to get on the internet and check the licensing server. So if I hit OK here, it pulls up another dialog that allows me to go ahead and obtain my license, or effectively to license the unit. So I'm going to hit the Obtain License button here, and effectively it's asking for a voucher code. Now, where do I get a voucher code? Normally, you would place an order with your distributor, or however you normally buy Horner. Could be directly to Horner if that's how you normally get Horner products. And when you purchase Enhanced IEC license, you'll be sent via email a voucher code. So we need to paste it in here. Now, I did receive my voucher code, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here. It's just a series of characters. I'll copy it. All right, and then I will paste it here. And I will hit Apply Voucher. It's telling me it has one license currently available because it has not been used yet. I'll hit Apply Voucher. And it tells me the voucher code was applied successfully. The unit needs to be power cycled to complete the licensing process. Okay, good. All right, so we've basically completed the process of licensing the unit with the exception that we haven't done the power cycle yet. So after I power cycle, then I should be able to see on the system menu validation that the unit has been licensed. So let's go ahead and do the power cycle now. Okay, so I'm power cycling the controller as we speak. There we go. And I should be able to verify that we're licensed for Enhanced IEC by going to the System menu, going to the License Details screen, and it tells me that, sure enough, we have an Enhanced IEC license because that is set at yes. So at this stage, I can remove my memory card because I don't need it anymore if my permanent application isn't going to have a memory card. All right, so that completes the process for licensing a eligible OCS unit for Enhanced IEC. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap up our topic for today. So with Enhanced IEC, one difference between Enhanced and Standard IEC is that the logic is directly executed at runtime. No translation required before download, which effectively means we've maximized our performance and the number of program variables that we can support. And we've got additional enhancements as well. The ability to do logic simulation and use some advanced troubleshooting tools like breakpoints and trace points, comprehensive system event handling that can handle, for instance, an issue with an array index that we didn't anticipate, much better string handling capability, and a flexible Modbus data map. And if you want to use Enhanced IEC, you will need to use a license for the XL series and the XL Prime series. The upcoming Canvas series will not require a license, or it will basically be pre-licensed at the factory. But in either case, the license cost for XL series and XL Prime series is very modest. Okay, this is the point in the program where I remind you that we're here every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, whether we are fully live like today, although my demo was pre-recorded, I guess, or whether we have a pre-recorded video that is streamed live at 2 o'clock. But in either case, we have people standing by looking to answer your questions, and we'd also love to see your comments as well. And remember, today, if you leave a comment that you want to try Enhanced IEC, we'll get you that free voucher. Okay, so again, as a reminder, IEC training coming up September 13th and 14th. I think we still have a couple of spots available for that. And don't forget, we're celebrating 10 years of the Horner Lighting Group. Check out their great videos alongside our automation content on the Horner APG channel. And we haven't yet announced all of our September events, but check our newsletter that's coming out very shortly and check our website. Also, next week, we have got that one planned for you. Should be fun. So we did one called Discover Little Known But Useful System Registers. That was a live stream topic we covered, I think, a couple months ago. It was very popular. And we have even more little known but useful system registers to review with you that you can really use in some of your applications. So you definitely want to check that out. Now, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, don't hesitate to do so. We won't send you a bunch of spam or anything like that. And subscribing doesn't cost anything. And if you choose notifications when you subscribe, you'll be notified every time we go live or every time we post a new video. Okay, so until next week, oh, before I say that, don't forget to ask for your free voucher code. We'll be happy to send it to you. And until next week, let's all get out there and do us some good.